Hello and welcome to an Our Fake History digital short. Today we're talking about the real Santa Claus. Roll the theme. Hey everyone, my name is Sebastian Major and I'm the host of the Our Fake History podcast. That's the podcast where we explore historical myths and try to determine what's fact, what's fiction, and what is such a good story that it simply must be told. Here on the digital shorts, I like to take a little something that we've been exploring on the longer audio podcast and serve it in a more bite-sized video package. A few seasons back on Our Fake History, we looked at the myth of Santa Claus, and I tried to figure out exactly how a 3rd century bishop was transformed into the magical North Pole-dwelling giver of gifts. With the holidays upon us, I thought it was time to once again ask the question, is Santa Claus real? Now, if you're a parent and your kid ever asks you that question, you can actually say, yes, Santa Claus is totally real and not technically be lying. St. Nicholas was almost certainly a real person. Now, you might be forgiven for omitting the fact that he was a Greek-speaking saint who lived in what is today modern Turkey in the late 3rd century. You may also want to omit that he died hundreds of years ago. According to tradition, Nicholas was born in 270 AD in the small town of Patara in Anatolia, which at the time was controlled by the Roman Empire. He was apparently born wealthy, but after the death of his parents, he dedicated his large fortune to helping the poor and supporting the early church. His great piety got him elevated to the position of bishop in the port town of Myra. But I should say that the real details of Nicholas's life are hard to speak about with any certainty. The first biography of Nicholas is more rightly called a hagiography. Those were embellished tales of saints' lives that were popular during the medieval period. The first complete hagiography of St. Nicholas that has survived was written in the 800s, some 500 years after his death. Nevertheless, historians of the era still believe that he was a real figure. Nicholas's name pops up in enough contemporary historical documents to suggest that he was a real guy. Archaeologists even believe that we still have his remains preserved in Italy. So, yeah, you can go pay homage to the dead bones of Santa Claus. Nicholas of Myra is actually recorded as being one of the attendees of the famous Council of Nicaea. That was the church council that solidified what would become Orthodox Christian theology for centuries. Nicholas being at Nicaea is kind of like finding out that a band played Woodstock. Even if you were kind of a side player, it still makes you legendary just because you were there. There's even a great story that during a particularly heated argument with another delegate at the council, Saint Nick rose from his seat and slapped the man across the face for being a heretic. My Santa kicks ass and takes names in the name of obscure theological arguments. Nicholas's life of piety, sacrifices for the early church, and a handful of miraculous tales eventually got him recognized as a saint. And in the early medieval period, St. Nicholas became one of the most popular and venerated saints. This seems to have been for 2 reasons. First, he was associated with many impressive miracles. One of his early honorifics was Nicholas the Wonder Worker. Secondly, he was the patron saint of so many different groups. Not only was he the patron saint of children, he was also the guardian of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, prostitutes, brewers, pawnbrokers, and students. His association with sailors made his veneration particularly popular in port towns. In the medieval era, being a popular saint meant that people made a big deal out of your saint's feast day. St. Nicholas Day was December 6th, and a tradition of gift-giving grew up around the celebration of that particular feast. This was in imitation of a few particularly well-known stories about the saint. And now we are at the good stuff, because these are truly the first Santa Claus stories. And man, they are weird. So let's get into them. There's a story that once there were 3 children who had been sent to go gather food in the fields near their town. It was hard work, and it wasn't long before the 3 lads convinced each other that playing games and exploring would be a much better use of their time. So the boys set off exploring. Before long, they were far from home and a little lost. Much worse, their day of play had left them all extremely hungry. It was at that moment that they saw in the distance a little butcher shop. Surely, they thought, the kindly butcher would take pity on them and give them a little something to eat before they started their journey back home. Little did the boys know that they had just stumbled upon the most evil butcher shop in all the land. The butcher was rumored to be a notorious child murderer. While the local people had suspected that he had been behind the disappearance of many kids, no evidence of his crimes could ever be discovered. But, of course, the 3 little boys had no idea of this when they knocked upon his door. The butcher came to the door, and the boys told him their predicament. They asked if they could please have a little food to give them some energy for their journey home. "Why, of course," said the evil butcher as he invited the children inside his shop. Once inside, the man unsheathed his sharp butcher's knife and proceeded to chop the boys up into pieces. He then took the remains of the children and dumped them in a barrel, adding salt and brine to pickle them as a kind of grisly trophy of his crimes. When the children didn't return to their homes, their parents searched, but finding nothing, they started to despair. They were always suspicious of the evil old butcher, but with no proof, there was little they could do but mourn their loss. Then, years later, a holy man came to town. He was the bishop of the nearby city of Myra, and many believed that he was a living saint. This was none other than Saint Nicholas himself. Upon hearing the sad tale of the missing children and the suspicious butcher, Saint Nicholas decided that he would investigate. He went to the butcher shop, and upon entering the building, he could sense that the remains of the boys were still nearby. He then turned to the butcher and demanded that he open his large salting tub. Shocked and overawed by the holy man, the butcher obeyed. St. Nicholas then put his hands on the tub and prayed to God, saying, "Rise up, children!" Just then, a miracle occurred. The 3 pickled boys were miraculously resurrected. They jumped out of the barrel looking as healthy as the morning that they had left their parents' houses. The families were reunited with their kids, the butcher was finally brought to justice, and St. Nicholas would from then on in be known as the patron saint of children. Next, we have the tale of the 3 poor sisters. The story goes that a man living in Nicholas's city of Myra had 3 daughters, but he was so poor that he had no money to pay for their dowry. Due to their father's poverty, it was all but certain that they would never be able to be married. Indeed, their father felt like he had no other choice than to put them out on the street as sex workers. Hearing of this dire situation, St. Nicholas started visiting the house at night. On 3 separate occasions, the saint visited the home and tossed a bag of gold through the window. 1 bag for each of the daughters' dowries. The story goes that when St. Nicholas lobbed his bags of gold into the house, they always had a way of landing in one of the girls' shoes or stockings that they had hung up by the fire to dry. St. Nicholas the gift giver, popping welcome gifts in your stockings, comes from this tale. Finally, we have the tale of a boy named Basilios. The story goes that on the eve of the feast of St. Nicholas, the port city of Myra was attacked by pirates from Crete. While looting the town, they captured a young boy named Basilios, who they planned to keep as a slave. Basilios was taken back to Crete, where he was forced to work as the cupbearer for the local ruler. Every day he was tasked with filling the ruler's golden cup with wine. He was enslaved in this way for a year, and as the feast of St. Nicholas approached again, he became deeply sad and started to cry. When the ruler saw that he was crying, he asked the boy why. The boy sadly replied that today was the feast of St. Nicholas, and he wanted nothing more than to be home with his family. When the ruler heard this, the heartless man declared, "You shall never see your family again, slave." Then, just like that, St. Nicholas appeared. He grabbed the boy, in some versions, he grabs him by the hair, and miraculously flew away from Crete with Basilios under his arm. Before the boy knew what was happening, he was back home. St. Nicholas had deposited him safely with his family. As an added bonus, the boy was still holding the pirate leader's golden cup. So, here we get the trope of a flying St. Nicholas who can appear anywhere at will and travel through the sky at impressive speeds. So, these stories, despite feeling weirdly violent and macabre, give us some essential parts of the Santa Claus mythos. The protection of children, the giving of gifts, and the ability to appear miraculously wherever he is needed. Naturally, the Feast of St. Nicholas on December 6th became associated with gift giving, particularly gifts for children. Children would be told that the saint himself would appear at their home to leave treats and small gifts in their shoes, just as he had done in the famous story. However, Nicholas was also presented as a stern and judgmental saint who could dole out discipline to naughty children. St. Nicholas may have been the protector of kids, but he was known to get angry when children were being impious or disrespectful to their parents. And so a tradition grew up that St. Nicholas would punish children who had been bad, along with rewarding those who had been good. But of course, this is only the first part of the story. How did this serious 3rd century saint get transformed into the jolly old elf who gives gifts on Christmas, as opposed to St. Nicholas Day? To find out, you need to go listen to episode number 101 of the Our Fake History podcast. You'll hear the rest of the story there. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to get more wild stories from the past.